Good evening. Welcome to the Granada Forum, an organization dedicated to the truth. At the end of the program, our speaker's presentation, there will be a question and answer program without restriction. Feel free to ask any question. That's the true meaning of freedom of speech. Even the press is invited to ask questions if any of them are here. As children, we are taught of a word called character. As adults, we seldom run into those with it. Least wise in the media or inside the beltway. It takes character to stand alone and, like David, challenge Goliath. Like Terry Reid of Compromised, like Gary Aldrich of Unlimited Access, like Chris Reddy of Death of Vince Foster, like Ambrose Pritchard of the London Daily Telegraph. We have men of character in our own midst. They seldom are forced into the limelight until the conduct of others that betray their public trust force the issue. The fabric of our society has been torn by some that have an agenda and have suppressed it. On November 15th of 1996, just 3 months ago, a dedicated true patriot stood his ground and did what we can appreciate. Picture in your mind's eye CIA Director John Deutsch on a propaganda mission to South Central Los Angeles to calm the waters as a result of articles that appeared in the San Jose Mercury News. He was hosted by Congresswoman Juanita McDonald. Without blinking an eye, our speaker said, "I am a former Los Angeles Police narcotics detective, and I can tell you that the agency has been dealing in drugs in this country for a long time. It is my distinct pleasure and honor to greet in the behalf of the Granada Forum and introduce a man that deserves our respect and attention. Please welcome Mr. Michael Ruppert."
Thank you. Thank you very much. I guess the first thank you I'd like to give tonight is to someone who's not here, Mr. Peter Ford of KIV Radio, who introduced me to you all and who made it possible for me to be here tonight. I did a show last night from midnight to 2, and it was a wonderful experience, and if what we do tonight is anything like that, I think we're all going to have a lot of fun. I'd also like to thank Ann, who was very kind to make arrangements for me tonight. In 19 years, this is the first chance, believe it or not, that I have had to address an assembled group of people on one issue and to teach what I know and to share my experiences. I've done it in snippets, I've done it on radio talk shows, but never with the opportunity to lay out some evidence and make a case, and I'm very grateful for that. It was a long wait. And I am here tonight in two capacities. If there's any lawyers in the room, I'll pray for you, but you know that in a court of law, they talk about evidence. And one of the first kinds, and actually the most preferred kind of direct evidence, is witness testimony. And all over the major media and in Congress, you hear statements that there is no evidence that CIA deals drugs. Well, a witness can raise his hand under oath in court, and that becomes evidence when he tells his story. And I have evidence to give you from my own experience. I am also here as a detective, if you will, although I have not carried a badge since November 30th, 1978. I consider myself to have been a detective working on one case for all these years. And so I'm going to present to you some of that evidence tonight. I want to start by giving you just a little historical background. And you'll see all these books on the table here, and I don't know if they're in frame or not. They're probably not. But you'll see The Big White Lie by Michael Levine, who is a former DEA station chief, or country attaché they call it, from Argentina. He was present in Argentina in 1980 when the Central Intelligence Agency installed the government of Luis Garcia Meza, who was a cocaine lord, and gave him the whole country. And that was done in conjunction with the Argentine military. Garcia Meza's chief of security was Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon. Okay? So there was heavy Nazi infiltration into the Argentinian military. Mike Levine was there. He documented it. He protested it. And, of course, it fell into this black hole that those of us in law enforcement know so well. The next book is that you see there is written by the only man that I'm aware of who's been at this longer than I have. And I'm going to hold this one up. It's called The Politics of Heroin. It was originally called The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia by Professor Alfred McCoy, published first in 1972. That's 25 years ago. Okay? It is a Bible for those of us who do this. When we talk about names, dates, places, the names, the dates, and the places are in here. Now again, if there's any lawyers in here, lawyers love to sue people. Okay? Why is it that this book has never been sued? There's a saying in the law, the truth is an absolute defense against libel. Okay? This is one of our major Bibles. It's in here. It was recently revised and updated to include all kinds of information on Iran-Contra. Okay? The next book that I want to show you, actually there are two, both written by the same authors. And these two men, I know both of them. They're both brilliant men. Professor Peter Dale Scott is a professor of English, believe it or not, at UC Berkeley. He got into this many years ago, and he has a PhD, and he is a dedicated researcher. His co-writer, Jonathan Marshall, is about as rare as a good lawyer. He's a good reporter. He works for the San Francisco Chronicle. He's an award-winning journalist. Neither one of these two books, which name names, dates, places, times, quantities, relationships, documents, have ever been sued. Ever. Okay, so when Jack Blum, who was the chief counsel for the Kerry Committee during the Iran-Contra era, recently testified to your friend and mine, Arlen Specter, he said, "We don't need to go out and investigate. We know." What he was alluding to is what is contained specifically in this book, which is all about Iran-Contra. Names, dates, places, computer logs, everything, it's all in here. Okay? We already know. We don't have to investigate. We know the CIA deals drugs. Of course, the Los Angeles Times completely omitted any reference to Jack Blum's testimony in their stories. Okay? These two books will give you anything you need to refute. You could take Oliver North apart with about 10 pages from this book alone and bury him. Okay? The last book that I wanted to show you, it's almost impossible to get in this country. I wonder why. You can get it in Canada. Written by my dear friend Celerino Castillo. Celi was a DEA agent. He's a decorated Vietnam vet who served first in Peru, and then in the Iran-Contra era he served in Central America. He served in Honduras and Salvador and Guatemala. And he was at Ilopango Airport, which was the major Contra supply airport in El Salvador for the northern front of the Contra war effort. And he describes in this, at the airport, two hangars, hangars 4 and hangars 5. Now he's got the records. Hangar 4 was the CIA hangar. Hangar 5 was the NSC hangar, both controlled by Oliver North. He recorded tail numbers. He watched the cocaine being loaded. He talked to the pilots. He got the flight plans. He watched as the planes were given gratis entry across the border into the United States. He wrote reports. And what happened was Ambassador Edwin Corr, who is now teaching at the University of Oklahoma at Norman, came to Celi and said, "Leave it alone, bud, it's a White House operation." That's evidence. That's a clue. Celi had this wonderful experience of going to a formal dinner at the U.S. Embassy in El Salvador. And the guest of honor that night was Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush. And so Celi was there and Bush was there, and they bring Bush over to Celi, and Mr. Vice President, this is Celerino Castillo, our senior DEA agent, and how do you do? You're, Mr. Bush, you're a hero for the country. And Celi said, "Mr. Vice President, I got to talk to you. There's something really wrong going on here. They're flying drugs out of 4 and 5, and CIA's behind it." And George Bush said, "Nice to meet you," and walked away. You know. Don't let anybody ever tell you there is no evidence. There is a mountain of evidence already in existence. Okay, it is irrefutable. It is ironclad. All right. Now, given that, I want to paint a little picture for you. I want to go back historically because my own experience is going to add a little dimension to this for you. Picture that I have a blackboard behind me, which I don't, okay? But say there's a blackboard, and we're going to say that right here is Southeast Asia. And then right here is the United States, and right here is South America, and over here is the Middle East, okay? Somebody was talking earlier about organized crime and CIA, and of course my opinion is CIA is organized crime. In the Second World War, some deals were made between the Office of Strategic Services and the Mafia in New Orleans. We were afraid of Nazi sabotage, so we took a guy named Lucky Luciano out of prison in New York. And he guaranteed that there would be no sabotage on the docks in New York. We took a guy named Vito Genovese. I like that, Vito Genovese. And we let him go back to Sicily to spy on it so that we could invade Sicily when PHad N went in there. Of course, they went right back into the drug business. They went right back into their operations. The bond is very, very close. Stop there. Fast forward to 1954. 1954, Dien Bien Phu. The French were kicked out of Indochina. Now, almost everybody knows that the Golden Triangle in Indochina is where most of the world's heroin has come from for a long time. It is the largest opium-growing region in the world. There are several others. The French, in order to sustain their war, had been paying the local tribesmen, the Hmong tribesmen, and Kuomintang, the Chinese who were kicked out of China, with opium, which was a long holdover from the British opium trade from the 18th century. When the French went out, we filled that void, and we sent some people to Indochina. Their names were Aderholt, Singlaub. Does that ring a bell to anybody? There was also a guy by the name of Paul Hellawell, and there was a guy by the name of Richard Stilwell. And these are the people that we sent into Southeast Asia, CIA, to take over where the French left. Extremely well documented